Good evening, everybody. This is Lonnie McHugh, and I will be your instructor for topic 4.16, Disbursing Agents. Our enabling objectives are 4.38, describe the procedure to advance funds to a disbursing agent using the DoD FMR Volume 5, and state the procedures to return funds to the disbursing officer using the DoD FMR Volume 5. Our reference, of course, is the DoD FMR Volume 5. Discussion points. Deputy Disbursing Officer, other disbursing agents, and the DD form 1081. And this is a multi-purpose form. It is used to advance funds to an agent from the disbursing officer, and it's also used for that agent to return funds to the disbursing officer. So let's first talk about the deputy disbursing officer. The deputy disbursing officer is essentially an assistant to the disbursing officer, and they have similar accountability. This person is appointed by the disbursing officer, and they act in the name of the disbursing officer if the disbursing officer isn't there. So they can conduct all the transactions that a disbursing officer can do. The disbursing officer appoints this member using the DD Form 577. And in that form, they'll talk about the roles and responsibilities of the deputy, what they can and cannot do, and that deputy will acknowledge that they are assigned to that position. The duties and responsibilities of the deputy can be restricted by the disbursing officer. And that could be done because the disbursing officer, maybe they don't want the deputy to do certain functions, or maybe they don't have a level of comfort or a system of controls in place to make sure that theft isn't a possibility. For example, on my ship, I had a deputy, and my deputy's only capabilities were to manage Navy cash. So they were able to reset individuals' pins on their cards or reissue a card or troubleshoot, but they could not issue cash or checks. All right. And so I said I had a deputy, and that's mainly because it's a requirement to have one. So you, as a disbursing officer, must appoint a deputy using the 577, and then you report that to DFAS. DFAS will then approve establishment of a deputy. And I haven't heard of any reason why they wouldn't, but I'm assuming if there were a history of financial issues, that they might disapprove that appointment. The 577 isn't only used to appoint, it is also used to terminate an appointment. And that could happen if, if the deputy was PCSing, or you as the dispersing officer were PCSing and you wanted the new dispersing officer to complete a full new DD form 577 with the deputy. And that helps with the new dispersing officer saying, yes, I appoint this person. I understand that they are capable and can do these certain functions, and I authorize them to do X, Y, and Z. Now we're getting ready to move on to our next discussion point, which is other agents. But there are a few things that I want to mention about the deputy. So the deputy can act in the place of the dispersing officer. So if you were the dispersing officer and you became, you died or disabled or for some reason not at your appointed position, the deputy can act on your behalf for a period of up to 2 months, essentially. It is the last month or the last day of the second month. So if I was the dispersing officer, it is April. If something were to happen to me, then my deputy could operate April and then May and the last day of May. So 2 months. Well, June. April to May, 1 month. May to June, 2 months, and then the last day of June. there's a whole process if you as the dispersing officer or a dispersing officer is no longer able to be at their appointed place of duty, but we're not going to dive down into that in this lesson. But the DoD FMR Volume 5 spells that out very clearly. There has to be an inventory board. They have to inventory your entire dispersing office, and that's probably going to be maintained or manned by your cash verification team and headed by the deputy. You do have other agents that you can have besides your deputy. And so that's going to be cashiers, pay agents, collection agents, and change fund custodians. And you will appoint these on the DD Form 577, just like your deputy. But the difference is there are restrictions that these folks have to have. So they cannot sign U.S. Treasury checks no matter what, and they cannot sign statements of accountability. And what that means is your 2657, your daily statement of accountability, they cannot sign that. Your 2665, your deputy's statement of accountability, they cannot sign that either. They are able to prepare those documents for you, but you, as a dispersing officer, will need to bottom line those. And a cashier is exactly what it sounds like. It's an individual who hands out money, collects money. They can do other things, though. They can prepare the accountability reports, like I talked about previously, and they can prepare vouchers. And again, they cannot sign U.S. Treasury checks, and they cannot accept checks drawn on the name of the DO or deputy dispersing officer. So that's talking about exchange for cash checks. They are not allowed to process those. Our next agent is the pay agent, and this is appointed by the commanding officer upon recommendation of the dispersing officer. They are, again, the dispersing officer will recommend specific tasks for them to be able to do. They cannot act as a certifying officer, so they cannot sign off on disbursements because they are the one doing the disbursement. So that would be a conflict of interest. And this is typically a collateral duty. Before we wrap up on the agents, I just want everyone to remember that the agents are in a separate location from the dispersing officer. So your deputy will be in the same space as you, and on section 5 of the 2657, you will have separate spots for the deputy's cash and the agent's cash. But on the front side of your 2657, there's line 6.5, and that is where the agent's funds will go. All right, moving on to discussion point 3, advancing funds to agents. So you as a dispersing officer will have to give money to your agents, whether that's your deputy or if that is one of these other agents that we just mentioned. We do that using the form 1081. If you, the dispersing officer, are issuing funds to an agent, you will start the 1081. Whenever you get finished issuing, you'll keep one copy of the 1081, and the second copy will be retained by the agent. So you both have a receipt of your transaction, if you will. All right, so the 1081, just like any other form, has a heading that you need to completely fill in. It'll have the command related information. So your UIC, your dispersing office name, your DSSN, your FPOAP, etc. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and we're going to run through these first, and then we're going to look at the 1081 and we can talk about them. So line 1 is your balance brought forward. This is your amount of funds that you have, your accountability from the previous day. If this was your initial issuance of funds, you didn't have anything previously, then it would be 0. All other times there should be a balance there. Line 2 is the US dollars that the agent has. Line 3 is a foreign currency, and it's in US dollar value. So you have to account for the exchange rate there. This is not very common anymore, but it is a possibility. Lines 4, 5, and 6, we will go over on the return, but we're not going to talk about them now. 7 alpha is treasury checks. So you can issue a treasury check to an agent in advance. And a reason for this would be if you were going on travel and you knew that your agent was going to need more cash, you could give them an exchange for cash check that they could take to the deputy or some other source of funding and get that cash check and replenish their stock. Line 8 is not used on advance, and line 9 is incorrect vouchers returned. Line 12 is total funds in the hands of an agent. So that's your total accountability at the bottom. All right, so here's what this form looks like. And you can see it has the header. So you see disbursing officer's name, address, DSSN, and then the agent, their name, grade, social security number, unit, address. You're not going to put the social security number on there though. Then you come down to row 1, and this is balance forward. That's your balance brought forward. So you're going to go over to column Charlie. You'll see that column A is transactions, B is increase, column Charlie beginning balance, delta decrease, E is ending balance. So you're going to go to 1 Charlie, balance brought forward, beginning balance, and you're going to put whatever your dollar amount that you had there before. So yesterday's line 12, total funds in hands of agent. So for this, we're just going to say it was $5,000. Now, as your transactions go on, you're going to look at US dollars, you're going to look at foreign currency, military payment certificates, collections. So these line items will affect how this is issued or returned. And we'll give you an example on the return because it's a little bit better, breaks down more line items. But on an issuance, you're going to have beginning balance. So that's what the agent will have. If you're issuing them more dollars, that'll go in this Bravo column, your increase. So again, if we had 1 Charlie, $5,000, and we as the disbursing officer wanted to give the agent an additional $1,000, we would put that in 2 Bravo. So you would have the balance brought forward, 1 Charlie plus the 2 Bravo, and your total in line 12 would then be 6,000. Right, moving on. So we're going to go to the turned in. And so just as the disbursing officer created the 1081 for an issuance of funds to an agent, if the agent is returning funds, they will initiate the 1081. They're going to do this at least weekly. So you want to close it out weekly, probably before the weekend. And you're also going to do it if the deputy or the agent is going to be gone 5 days or more. And if you see an irregularity. So if you thought that they mishandled money or you questioned a transaction, you could have them turn it in right then. There will once again be 2 copies. Well, there'll be an original and 2 copies. One of those will go to the disbursing officer and then the agent will have a copy. And then one will go into the retained returns. All right, so the 1081, we talked about line 1. It's the funds in the agent's account before return. Line 2, US currency. Line 3 again is foreign currency. Line 5 is collections, 6 deposits. 8 is paid vouchers. 10, 11 blank lines. So these are important. You'll put in Navy cash or checks paid, etc. on those. So you can fill those in and put whatever transaction you need to there. Line 12 is again total funds in hands of agent. So to help us walk through this, we're going to go to an example. So in this example, we received advance funds from the disbursing officer. So we know that on our 1081, our one Charlie is going to have $5,000. That was $5,000 from previous day. And so we'll see this down here on this example, one Charlie. And then we collected from ship store cash collection agent. This is what happened on the agent's accountability. So collections will go up $1,500. And that is our 5 Bravo. We have multiple transactions here, so you'll see it says 4,875, but we're going to add that to some other transactions. All right, then the agent cashed personal checks in the amount of $350. So we're going to go back to the 1081, and you can see that they cashed checks $350, and that went to line 10 where they filled that in. Remember, line 10 is blank. Then they paid Shore Patrol reimbursement for $550. So that's a paid voucher for $550. Then they collected cash for MMPA overpayment in the amount of $3,375. So that is a collection. Sorry. 5 Bravo, total collections $4,875. And then discovered counterfeit currency of $20. So that will go on 11. Remember, 11 is blank as well. And they just abbreviated counterfeit currency, $20. So whenever you're filling out this form, you'll see that you had a beginning balance of $5,000. You had collections of $4,875, which brings your accountability in that section to $9,875. If you are doing a return, say in this example, we didn't go over this, but it was said that $5,000 is the most accountability you could have. So they are returning the paid vouchers. They're returning $3,955 in cash, $350 in cash checks, and the counterfeit currency to the disbursing officer, bringing their accountability back down to $5,000. On DoD Learn, there's a couple examples that you can walk through on this to help a little bit more. And we're running through this a little bit quick. So going into the knowledge check, the main things to know: who initiates the DD Form 1081 on an advance? So that is the disbursing officer advancing funds to an agent. And the disbursing officer will initiate that. They're saying, hey, I want you to have this much cash. I want you to have this much check. I will start the form. For a DD 1081 for a turn-in, the agent will initiate. They're saying, hey, I need to turn this much money back in. I'm going to start this form and send it to you. How often should the disbursing officer balance his or her deputy, agent, or cashier? So any type of agent, you should do that weekly. Who appoints an individual to the position of deputy disbursing officer? So that's going to be the disbursing officer. Summary, we talked about the deputy, the other agents, the DD Form 1081, prepared for advancing the funds and doing the turn-in. And that wraps up this evening's short lesson. If you have questions, please let me know. You can email me, text me, or you can leave a question in the comments. All right, have a great evening. See y'all next time.